The most protected man on earth was killed today, and the man who made it possible had been standing next to him for years. Deep underground, the supreme leader waited in his most protected bunker, convinced the walls around him made him untouchable. The conflict above ground felt distant. Down here, he believed he was safe. The commander of the Quds force entered the bunker with purpose. Ismail Khamenei, one of the most powerful men in the Islamic Republic, the man who inherited Soleimani's empire. He brought operational updates. He brought reassurances. He brought a recommendation. The meeting upstairs should proceed. The building was secure. The moment was right. What Khamenei did not know was that Khamenei had already made a different kind of arrangement. The supreme leader rose from his command desk and moved toward the bunker exit. Upstairs, the meeting room awaited. For the first time in days, he was leaving the deepest level of protection. Khamenei walked beside him through the corridor. The meeting room on the upper floor was already filled. Iran's most senior military and security officials waiting at the table. No one in that room suspected anything. No alerts had been received. No warnings had come. This was the inner circle. The most trusted men in the Islamic Republic gathered in one place. Khamenei entered the room and took his place at the head of the table. Khamenei took his seat among the others, present, composed, giving no indication that anything was different about this morning. The discussion began. Khamenei checked his watch. He raised a quiet word to the official beside him, a brief matter requiring his attention elsewhere. He would return shortly. He stood. He moved toward the door. In a corridor 1 floor below the meeting room, Khamenei stopped. He reached for an encrypted device. One transmission. Coordinates confirmed. Attendance confirmed. The CIA had its final verification. Thousands of miles away, a CIA operations room received the signal. The target was in the building. Senior attendance confirmed. The call went immediately to Israeli command. At an Israeli airbase, 2 pilots received their final mission order. The target coordinates were already loaded. The aircraft were already armed. They had been waiting for this transmission for days. The jets rolled onto the runway and accelerated into the night sky. Below them, a city that did not know what was coming. Inside the meeting room, Khamenei sat at the head of the table, the discussion continuing, the officials unaware. The chair where Khamenei had been sitting remained empty. No one had yet thought to ask why. Khamenei moved through the building's lower corridor toward the exit, unhurried, deliberate, a man with somewhere else to be. The precision munitions had already detached from the aircraft, locked, armed, descending. He pushed through the exit door and walked away without looking back. He had delivered everything he promised. His part was finished. The munitions struck the building's upper floors with surgical precision. Fire, pressure, and debris moved through the structure in fractions of a second. When the dust began to settle, the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic lay motionless beneath the collapsed structure. The most protected man in Iran, found, reached, gone. And the man who put him in that room was already far from the building. Now let's go into more detail. Ismail Khamenei did not become a suspect by accident. The pattern existed before anyone was willing to name it. And when you lay it out in sequence, it stops looking like luck. Khamenei was in Lebanon on the day Hassan Nasrallah was killed. Israeli intelligence had hunted Nasrallah for years. And on the one day they finally reached him, Khamenei was in the same city, the same operational environment, and walked away without a scratch. At the time, it was noted. It was not yet understood. During the 12 days of direct conflict, Israeli strikes systematically dismantled Iran's senior command structure. Generals, commanders, officials with decades of institutional knowledge, eliminated in a campaign of precision targeting that suggested something beyond signals intelligence. Someone was providing confirmation. Someone was telling Israeli planners not just where these men worked, but where they would be at a specific time. Khamenei survived every strike, every escalation, every wave of targeting that consumed the men around him. And then came Saturday. The meeting was called at short notice, or appeared to be. In reality, the selection of that day, that building, that gathering of Iran's most senior military and security leadership had been shaped by a process Khamenei's protective apparatus never detected, because the man doing the shaping was inside the apparatus itself. Khamenei's position gave him something that no external intelligence operation could replicate. He was not an observer of the Supreme Leader's schedule. He was a participant in constructing it. As Quds Force commander, his access extended across every dimension of Iran's operational security: the locations, the timings, the attendee lists, the internal assessments of which facilities were considered safe and which were not. When he told Khamenei that the building was secure, that the meeting should proceed, that Saturday morning was an appropriate moment to gather the senior command, he was not lying about what he knew. He was using what he knew to deliver exactly what had been requested of him. The Shabbat dimension of this operation will be studied for years. The belief inside Khamenei's protective environment that Saturday carried a margin of safety, that Israeli military culture and political sensitivity around the Jewish day of rest would constrain the timing of any major strike, was not an accident of Iranian thinking. It was a perception that had been allowed to calcify into operational assumption. Whether Khamenei actively reinforced that belief, or whether American and Israeli intelligence cultivated it through other channels, or whether planners simply identified it and chose to exploit it, the effect was identical. The Supreme Leader of the Islamic Republic sat in a meeting room on a Saturday morning, feeling protected by a logic that had already been turned against him. Consider what Khamenei's position actually meant in operational terms. Soleimani built the Quds Force into the most capable covert operations network in the Middle East. When Soleimani was killed in January 2020, Khamenei inherited not just the title but the architecture, the relationships, the networks, the institutional knowledge of how Iran projects power across the region. He also inherited the access, the proximity to Khamenei, the seat at the table when the most sensitive decisions in the Islamic Republic were made. If Khamenei had been turned, and the evidence of his survival pattern suggests that turning happened sometime before these events, then American and Israeli intelligence did not simply recruit an asset. They recruited the asset, a man with visibility into Iran's most sensitive operations, its command structure, its leadership security arrangements, and the personal trust of the Supreme Leader himself. The CIA's surveillance operation, which had been running for months, did not operate in isolation. Surveillance tells you where a man has been. It builds patterns. It identifies facilities. But to generate a strike on a target of Khamenei's profile, a man whose entire protective apparatus is designed to make his future location unknowable, you need something surveillance cannot provide on its own. You need someone who knows not where he has been, but where he will be, at a specific time, in a specific place, with enough certainty to move an entire military operation around that window. Khamenei provided that certainty. The operational lessons here are ones that every intelligence service and every protective detail in the world is absorbing right now. The first lesson is about access level. Khamenei's greatest vulnerability was never his bunkers. It was never the hardness of his physical security or the loyalty of his bodyguards. It was the man who sat beside him in the room where decisions were made. The man whose recommendations shaped the schedule. The man whose presence in the protective environment was so established, so structurally embedded, that questioning it would have meant questioning the system itself. You cannot harden a facility against a threat that sits at the head of the table. The second lesson is about the survival pattern. Khamenei survived too many targeted moments to be explained by coincidence. Nasrallah's death, the systematic elimination of the senior command structure during 12 days of conflict, the Saturday meeting. In each case, Khamenei was proximate to the targeting environment and walked away. Intelligence services do not always act immediately when a pattern like this emerges. Doing so can reveal the source, confirm that surveillance is active, allow the asset to be identified, and the operation to collapse. Sometimes you allow the pattern to continue. You protect the asset by not appearing to notice. And you wait for the moment when the asset can deliver the target that makes everything else worth the wait. The third lesson is about the cost of assumption. The Shabbat belief, the comfortable logic that Saturday was a protected day, was not a minor error in situational awareness. It was a structural failure in how Khamenei's protective environment processed risk. Comfortable assumptions, held long enough, stop being assessed and start being relied upon. In intelligence operations, the assumptions your target relies upon are not liabilities to be avoided. They are tools to be used. The Saturday deception did not require technical complexity. It required only that the right people continue believing something that was no longer true. 46 years. That is how long the Islamic Republic spent constructing a system designed around one outcome: the survival of the supreme leader. Multiple layers of physical security, hardened facilities, movement patterns designed to make location prediction impossible, an intelligence apparatus dedicated to identifying exactly the kind of internal threat that Khamenei represented. All of it was defeated by a man who had been sitting inside it, a man who knew the schedule because he helped build it, a man who knew which building was considered secure because he was part of the apparatus that made that assessment, a man who had survived every wave of targeting that consumed the people around him, not because he was lucky, but because his value was too great to spend on anything less than the target that mattered most. Khamenei is gone. The meeting he attended on a Saturday morning in Tehran, in a building his own Quds Force commander told him was safe, was the last meeting of his life. And Ismail Khani, the man who inherited Soleimani's network, who survived Nasrallah's death, who walked out of the building minutes before the strike, is somewhere right now that is very far from Iran. What you have just heard is not confirmed intelligence. It is deep analysis, built from open sources, behavioral patterns, and the kind of operational logic that intelligence services apply when the official account has not yet been written. The details of who gave what and when and why will take months or years to fully emerge. They may never be fully confirmed. But the pattern is there, and patterns, in this business, are rarely accidents. When the confirmed picture becomes clearer, we will bring it to you here. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that coverage when it comes.